It's a curious thing, branding. We live surrounded by logos, colors, taglines, and promises that blend into the background of daily life until, suddenly, something about them compels us to stop and pay attention. What makes one name cling to memory while another slips away unnoticed? Why does one symbol summon trust, desire, or nostalgia, while another barely stirs recognition? When I first opened the 22 Immutable Laws of Branding by Ries and Laura Ries, I was looking for tidy answers, perhaps a quick list of do's and don'ts that could unlock the secret to crafting a memorable brand. What I found instead was something both simpler and deeper, a meditation on focus, perception, and the subtle art of becoming unforgettable in a world that barely has time to look. Written with the clarity and directness that made Ries famous in the world of marketing strategy, the book doesn't read like a dusty textbook or a technical manual. Instead, it feels like sitting across the table from two seasoned advisors who've spent years watching what actually works, and more often what spectacularly fails in the real world of brands. There's an honesty in their tone, a willingness to point out that, despite what creative agencies or eager entrepreneurs might wish, branding isn't magic. It's discipline, it's sacrifice, and most importantly, it's about what happens not inside the company boardroom, but inside the customer's mind. At the heart of the book lies a deceptively simple idea. A brand isn't what you say it is, it's what other people say it is. And shaping that perception depends less on clever slogans or glossy ads than on obeying what the authors call immutable laws. These aren't laws in the legal sense, of course, but patterns, recurring truths born from decades of observation. They're often counterintuitive, sometimes uncomfortable, but always grounded in a single truth. In branding, perception beats reality every time. One law that struck me immediately was the law of expansion, the seductive but dangerous temptation to stretch a brand beyond its original focus. Time and again, Ries and Ries argue companies try to be everything to everyone, and in doing so, dilute what made them special. Think of brands that once stood for something clear and singular, then blurred into a vague promise of more choices or something for everyone. The authors show that successful brands become powerful by narrowing their focus, not broadening it. It's in the discipline to say no that a brand's meaning sharpens in people's minds. That idea, uncomfortable as it may be, feels deeply human. We all want to be liked by everyone. We all fear missing out on potential opportunities. But in branding, as in life, it's often the willingness to commit to one clear idea, even at the cost of turning some people away, that earns real loyalty. Reading this, I thought not just about companies, but about how people craft personal brands too. The impulse to polish every weakness versus the quiet power of embracing a defining strength. Then there's the law of the category, which says it's often better to create a new category you can own than to fight for a place in someone else's. It's why, the authors explain, Charles Schwab didn't try to beat Merrill Lynch at its own game, but instead pioneered discount brokerage, a new category with its own set of rules and expectations. The first brand in a new category tends to dominate it in people's minds, because it becomes the default choice, the shorthand everyone remembers. As I read, I realized this isn't just a business insight. It's a lesson about courage and creativity. It's easier to imitate than to innovate, to improve slightly on what's already there rather than invent something that didn't exist before. But the brands we remember most fondly, whether it's Starbucks in coffee culture or Tesla in electric vehicles, often succeeded because they redefined the game rather than playing by someone else's rules. Throughout the book, the Rises return to a single theme. Branding is about owning a word or concept in the mind of the customer. Volvo owns safety. FedEx owns overnight. Crest owns cavities. These words become mental shortcuts, the emotional hooks that make the brand instantly recognizable and trusted. It sounds easy, almost obvious, yet the discipline it requires is anything but. To own a word, a brand must sacrifice others. Volvo might want to talk about style or performance, but doing so would blur the clarity of its safety promise. This discipline is perhaps the hardest lesson in the book, and the one most often ignored. It requires humility to accept that a brand can't be all things. It requires patience to build an association that might take years to take hold. And it requires resilience to resist chasing trends that threaten to pull the brand off course. But in the author's view, There is no shortcut. Clarity beats complexity, focus beats breadth. Another law that lingers is the law of consistency. A brand's message, look, and promise must remain stable over time, not static but anchored in a core idea. Too many brands, the Rises argue, fall into the trap of reinvention for its own sake, mistaking novelty for relevance. Yet the most trusted brands feel familiar because they honor the promise they made from the start, even as they evolve to stay current. It's the difference between thoughtful evolution and restless reinvention. What struck me reading this is how deeply branding is a matter of trust. When a brand changes direction too often, it teaches customers not to believe what it says because what it says keeps changing. Consistency, by contrast, builds a kind of quiet, compound interest in credibility. Each ad, product, and experience reinforcing the brand's chosen message until it becomes part of how customers see the world. Yet the 22 Immutable Laws of Branding isn't merely a set of stern warnings. It's also a celebration of creativity, not the superficial creativity of flashy campaigns, but the deeper creativity of seeing what isn't there yet. A new category to claim, a word to own, a single idea to build an entire business around. The Rises argue that true branding genius isn't about doing everything better than competitors. It's about doing one thing so clearly, so consistently, that no competitor can copy it without looking like an imitation. In its final chapters, the book turns to personal branding, a topic that feels even more relevant today than when the book was first written. Here, the same rules apply. Clarity, focus, and authenticity matter more than self-promotion. The authors point out that the most successful personal brands, think Oprah or Martha Stewart, stand for something specific in people's minds, built patiently over years, not through clever slogans but through actions and consistency. Reflecting now, what stays with me about the 22 Immutable Laws of Branding isn't the technical side of logos or slogans, but something deeper, a philosophy of communication grounded in respect for the audience. It's an acknowledgement that, in a noisy world, people don't have the time or interest to decode complex messages. A brand's job, ultimately, is to make its promise so clear, so focused, and so emotionally resonant that it lodges in the mind effortlessly. And while the laws themselves sound firm, the book's spirit is not rigid but pragmatic. The Rises don't claim branding is about perfection. They know it's messy, unpredictable, shaped by culture and timing. But by offering these laws, they give readers a compass, a way to navigate the endless temptations to be broader, louder, or trendier, and instead build something enduring. By the last page, I realized the real lesson is that branding isn't about logos, colors, or even clever words. It's about choices. What do you choose to stand for? What do you choose to sacrifice? What word or feeling do you want to own in people's minds? And can you summon the courage and discipline to protect that choice when the market, the media, and even your own team tempt you to blur it? Reading the 22 Immutable Laws of Branding left me with a renewed respect for the brands that seem almost inevitable in hindsight, the names and symbols we trust without thinking. They didn't become that way by accident. They became that way because, at some point, someone decided not to be everything, but to be something clearly, consistently, and bravely. In a world that celebrates more, bigger, and faster, there's something quietly radical about the book's message. That the real power in branding, as in life, comes from knowing who you are and having the courage to stay true to it. And that, perhaps, is a law worth remembering long after the book is back on the shelf.